Brian. I've got a story to share that happened back in the early 80s when I was still an active duty sheriff deputy. It was something I'll never forget, and I think it's high time I shared it with others so that they might hear it and know that they're not alone. I've been listening to your show since the very beginning, and I appreciate your approach to the subject and the way that you treat the witnesses that come on to tell their stories. You being a former police officer is an added bonus for me. I know that you had to see some real shit as an Atlanta police officer, and I can tell that makes you a better interviewer. I'm telling my story to you now only because you've earned my respect. So one day I get this call from this elderly couple who lived way out in the boonies. They were all riled up because some chickens had gone missing from their coop, and they had been hearing some strange noises at night. Now, chickens go missing all the time, and there's always strange noises in the woods, but I figured I'd go check it out just to be on the safe side. So I drive over to their place, and what do I see? The coop was wide open, and it looked like someone or something with hands had broken the latch and opened it up. Now, that was just the start of something really weird, because over the next few years, I found myself responding to calls at this same house, time and time again. Now, as if the chicken heist wasn't enough, this couple starts discovering these massive footprints in their field. Now, I saw these things a couple of times myself. We're talking about human-looking footprints that were over 18 inches long. Shortly after they saw the first set of footprints, they started losing cows left and right. It was just like the cows were vanishing into thin air or something. I joked with my fellow deputies one time that I thought the cows were being taken by aliens. But it really was strange. They would just up and disappear, like a fart in the wind. I honestly didn't pay it much attention at first. I just thought the old couple might be seeing things or hearing things and just having a run of bad luck with the cows and the chickens, you know? But then one night, I got a call with them saying that something was lurking around outside their house. They sounded terrified, so I hopped in my patrol car and I raced over there as fast as I could. When I pulled down into their driveway, I couldn't believe my eyes. Right there in the headlights of my car stood a creature that I never thought I'd see in my lifetime. It was a Sasquatch, a real-life Sasquatch. This thing was humongous. It was at least 8 feet tall and it was covered with hair from head to toe. This thing was standing between their house and this small outbuilding that covered up the head of the couple's well. This thing froze when my headlights hit it, and it looked directly into my eyes. Those huge dark eyes, man. They pierced right through me. This thing looked at me for a couple of seconds and then it turned around and bolted, and it moved faster than anything I'd ever seen move before. Before I could even get my car in park, it was gone. Now let me tell you, seeing that Sasquatch changed everything for me. I couldn't deny what I saw. I went from being a skeptic to a true believer in just a matter of a few seconds. And now I feel like it's my duty to share my story with as many folks as possible. People need to know these things are out there wandering around in the shadows. So I'm here writing you now, hoping that my words will reach far and wide. I have no intentions of coming on the show. That's not what this is all about. This is simply about getting the story out there to as many people as possible that may be going through the same thing that old man and woman were going through. After seeing what I saw that night, I had to go into the house and tell them the truth. I wanted them to know this thing was around their house, and it was probably what had taken their chickens and cows. I had a duty to serve and protect, and I know you can relate. I took that oath very seriously, even if I had to look like I'd lost my mind and tell these folks I'd just seen Bigfoot in their yard. They were kind and generous people, and they were obviously shocked when I told them what I saw. They said they appreciated me coming out so quickly and that I'd been honest with them, even at the risk of sounding like I was crazy. To be honest with you, I still don't know if they truly believed me when I told them I saw Bigfoot in their yard. They never called me again after that night. I would stop by and see them from time to time when I was on patrol, and I even asked them a couple of times if they'd had any more issues. They said they hadn't seen anything or heard anything strange and that they hadn't lost any more animals. They both passed away just a few months apart that following year. After seeing what I saw that night, I couldn't let it go. I retired in the late 90s, and after the internet became more accessible, I started investigating every Sasquatch sighting and every encounter I could find. And boy, let me tell you, they were way more than I'd ever imagined. I reached out to other law enforcement officers, park rangers, and even civilian folks that had claimed to see these creatures. It turns out that my Sasquatch encounter was the tip of the iceberg. These reports were all over the country, from the dense forest in the Pacific Northwest to the remote swamps of Florida. Some claimed to have seen them lurking around their campsites, and others caught glimpses of massive forms dashing through the trees. It seemed like Sasquatch sightings were happening more frequently than anybody realized, but I believe that most folks are too scared or too embarrassed to talk about it. I started putting together my own file, collecting witness statements and any other evidence I could find. I even reached out to a few cryptozoologists and anthropologists who could maybe shed some light on these creatures. What I learned was fascinating, and it only added to the mystery. These Sasquatches, or Bigfoot as some people call them, at least from what I can gather, seem to be highly intelligent beings that possess a level of stealth and agility that's allowed them to evade capture for centuries. They're masters of camouflage and they blend in seamlessly with their surroundings. But what struck me the most was their elusiveness. They seem to be experts at avoiding human contact, yet people, including me, report seeing them all the time. As I got deeper into my research, I started uncovering ancient legends and folklore from different cultures around the world. It turns out, Sasquatch-like creatures have been a part of human history for centuries. Native American tribes tell tales of encounters with tall, hairy beings that possessed supernatural powers and guarded the sacred lands. But what was their purpose? Why did they choose to reveal themselves to some and remain hidden from others? These kind of questions still haunt me to this day, and I'm still trying to piece together the puzzle. It is clear to me that something bigger is at play here, and these things are way beyond our comprehension. I truly do believe that Sasquatches are more than just a mythical creature and figments of our imagination. They are guardians of our natural world, protecting the balance between man and nature. But as our world encroaches further into their territories, these Sasquatch are being forced to retreat deeper into the wilderness. They're like ghosts, vanishing before our very eyes as human civilization expands. And it's up to us to find a way to coexist, and to respect their domain and preserve the fragile bond between our worlds. So Brian, Sasquatch are not just creatures of legend. They are real, sentient beings who deserve our respect and protection. And if by chance you come face to face with a Sasquatch, just remember, I've been there too. So I'll continue my quest and I'll share my knowledge with anybody who's willing to listen. But I don't want any fame or fortune from it. I just want people to know that they exist. I know, because I've seen one. In 2006, there was a spat of Bigfoot sightings in the vicinity of Pine Ridge Native American Reservation in South Dakota. People began to call in with numerous reports of seeing a 10 to 15 foot tall brute of a beast stalking about the wilds with a hunchback, and in some cases, even bizarrely reported wearing a stovepipe hat. The sightings flooded the reservation's law enforcement agency, the Oglala Sioux Tribe Department of Public Safety. But among these, perhaps the most compelling is a report made by officers at the scene of such an account. The report was made by an officer by the name of James Twiss, who would tell the site Cryptomundo, "Hello, my name is James Twiss. I am a police officer on the Pine Ridge Reservation. I am passing on information regarding the rash of sightings of a tall man, or Bigfoot, on the Pine Ridge Reservation. During one of these sightings, I had our department's thermal imaging camera, and along with 6 officers, I did in fact pick up a large heat signature on the camera. Unfortunately, we did not have a recorder yet for the camera, so we weren't able to record it. We did watch it as it moved away from us down a gully, but it was missed by the other officers as they tried to find it with their flashlights. It is hard to explain, as it must have already been past the officers before they arrived on scene. We watched it go into a creek area which runs through town. We heard a flurry of dogs barking, but wasn't able to locate it. Also, to set the record straight, the first 2 sightings was called in as a 10 to 15 foot tall man who appeared to be wearing a stovetop hat and a long coat. It was reported to have been peeking into apartment complex common rooms where there were several witnesses. In 2015, there was a curious report making its rounds from police officers in the state of Pennsylvania. According to a report on the site Crypto Sightings, a police officer in McDade Park in Lackawanna County, Pennsylvania, said that he was out on patrol when he noticed a looming dark shape leaning over the roadway with a large hairy section, including a big hairy wrist and extremely muscular leg. The officer, who claims that he's an 18-year veteran of the force, said of his outlandish encounter, "I was driving on patrol in McDade Park in Scranton, PA. It was late at night and I was checking the park, making sure that it was okay, and I just noticed a very dark object leaning over the edge of the road near the pool as I drove past. I passed extremely close to the object, close enough for me to feel shocked to see a hairy section, as well as a muscled leg and a big hairy wrist and hand. As the creature turned, I screamed and grabbed for my cell phone to snap a picture, while also grabbing for my gun. I slammed on my brakes, and I was ready to shoot. I'm combat trained and I have a weapon. I just had to see what the hell this was. I wanted to see the entire thing for myself. But what can I say? Whatever it was for me was either a huge monkey or a Bigfoot. I'm not going to go public with this because it would cost me my job. There's something in that park I've heard stories about. Something roaming around the park late at night. Interestingly, there is another police officer report from Pennsylvania in August of 2017, who on this evening was driving along a road in a wooded location in southwestern section of Westmoreland County, PA, and he had a rather bonkers close encounter. As he made his way through the gloom of this remote place, he says that he noticed the odd detail of a slivery sheen of light ahead low to the ground. As the officer approached, he then became startled, realizing that the light was emanating from a ball of light that seemed to be going just ahead of a decidedly Bigfoot-like creature. Researcher Stan Gordon would investigate this, and he says of this off-the-wall account, the ball of light was actually ahead of a very strange being that looked to be about 6 feet tall or larger. It was tall and almost skeleton thin. The officer was of the opinion that the creature, when he first observed it, had been lying on its belly on the ground with its head facing towards the road. It then stood up, facing the road. In that dark location, he saw the dull light glowing from the head, illuminating the upper section of the body of the creature. While the officer watched, the creature turned towards the right. The dull illumination from the head lit up the shoulder area. The creature then turned and faced him, and then turned to the left, and took off at an incredible rate of speed towards a location away from the road. As it moved off, the witness could see its arms swinging. The officer indicated that it took off at a speed that he could only call abnormal. It was faster than anything I'd ever seen. It was there, and then it was gone. The officer assumed that the creature moved on 2 legs. However, he couldn't see the lower sections of the body in the dark. The officer described what he saw as standing around 6 feet tall or taller. He said the head was about 8 to 10 inches in diameter and shaped like a ball. He said that the head was just a ball of light, possibly egg-shaped, but still pretty round. The light that was being emitted was a dull white. The light illuminated to the shoulders, to the top of the chest, and a section of the arms, but he wasn't able to see the hands. The chest looked like it was about 18 inches across. The waist appeared to be small, but the arms were abnormally long. The long limbs also looked skeletal, with no muscle mass. The skin tone of the body appeared to be a dull, grayish blue. The officer said that he was unable to see any facial details. The entire experience only lasted about 10 seconds. The officer was confused about what he had saw and how it could move so fast. He pulled his patrol vehicle to the location where the creature had been seen standing and turned on the vehicle spotlight. He looked around the area, but saw no evidence on the ground. After the experience, the officer continued to try to make sense of what he had seen, but he couldn't figure it out. I was contacted soon after the incident, and we later discussed the incident in detail. What in the world is going on here? Finally, we have a report from the BFRO that allegedly happened as recently as July of 2019 in the state of Wisconsin. The witness is apparently a respected, retired law enforcement veteran who was out driving with his sister and his brother near Tripoli, Wisconsin, when they had a brush with the truly bizarre. The witness says, "The day was clear and cool. We were traveling approximately 10 to 15 miles an hour in my Chevy Suburban. I was looking out across the clearing when I saw a large reddish-brown upright figure moving along the tree line in the distance. It was too large to be a deer, and it didn't have the proper height or gait to be a bear. It had no muzzle or neck, and the smaller trees moved aside like it was pushing its way out into the woods." Reports like these are truly intriguing in the way that they come from actual law enforcement personnel, whom we wouldn't expect to be making up things or telling tall tales. In addition, police officers are typically thought to have better than average perception skills and eyes for detail. So whenever one makes an outlandish report of seeing something like this, it is enough to make one pause and think. It's impossible to know if any of these have any more merit than any of the other reports of the same kind. And in the end, we're all left to speculate and ponder such odd accounts from these supposedly traditionally reliable witnesses. Is there anything to it at all? Do police officers count as better than average or more reliable witnesses? I leave that for you to decide.